Hello, with explorers. Thank you all for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. I would want to first of all thank you all for watching our videos. We've always appreciate your time. Throughout these years, you've been amazing. And we hope that we make some huge impact in terms of your geopolitics in the region and how Africa begins to reshape itself. In this episode today, I really want to zoom into the country of Niger and the current geopolitical situation in that region, and specifically on why France imperialistic behavior in West Africa, specifically in Francophone countries, has been called to questions, has been exposed in a way that the world has never seen. And this behavior that France exercises in the region has been for many years. From the 1960s, 70s, 1950s, France's presence in Niger in particular has been called into question. The imperialistic behavior of France, it's in such a way that the world is beginning to realize why most of those regions are still stuck into where they are since independence. France's relationship with Niger has been that of exploitation, has been that of deceit, has been that of manipulation, and more importantly, exploitation. Look at France and Niger. It's like you're comparing apple and oranges. France, a major superpower, which has huge connections around the world, a country that is in the G7, in Security Council. What do you think and what chance does Niger has in terms of interaction? Mohamed Bazoum has no interest. He was in the country just as a puppet. He could not speak for his people. He could not bring investment. He could not develop the nation. Infrastructural wise, Niger was below par. Look at Niger, one of the poorest countries in the continent of Africa and around the world, and a major superpower interacting with country of Niger. It's been such in a way that the world was just watching. And if you look at Niger, does not have electricity. Niger has some percentage of electricity from different countries across the region. And France brings in uranium from that country to electrify France. Now, this relationship has been that of disgrace. I have to put it that way, because that is what it is. And France's investment and presence in Niger. Look at the amount of money that Niger will invest and also contribute to France. Niger is one of those countries in the continent of Africa that have drove France to an extent where the nation of France has realized that its colonial mindset in the region has proven to be a failed strategy, that Africa is no more in the 1970s or the 1960s. The African countries has risen. They are pushing back to France. They are driving back the colonial mindset that France has engulfed them over these years. If you look at Mali, if you look at also Burkina Faso and Guinea, considering Central African Republic, and now in Niger. Niger is one of those countries that has exposed France's imperialist aspect and behavior in Africa. Now, the mainstream media will mostly focus on that there is a coup in Niger. There is a coup indeed. Others will call it liberations. Others will call it, in other words, put it the way you want to put it. The bottom line here is that the people of Niger have looked behind and look at their history with France. France's imperialist behavior in the sub-Saharan Africa, specifically in Francophone Africa, has to be called on question. France has exploited Niger from when they gained independence until today. If you look at France's history in the region, it's been that of exploitation, lack of investment, and also manipulation. African countries, especially those in West Africa, have been put in some kind of a box over the years. They have been made to believe that France's perspective and France's interest comes first before that of their citizen. If you look at the basics, because we talk about all of these things about coup happening in Burkina Faso and the rest, focusing on Niger at the moment. Niger, I've looked at its history with France. It's been that of a failure because the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, came to power to try to re-energize and also re-strategize the relationship with Niger. But if you look at the strategy, has been the same. Nothing has actually changed. The relationship between France and Niger in terms of bilateral relationship is sour before even what's happening in the country. France's interaction in terms of business relationship with Niger, if you consider the prices that France purchased uranium from Niger, it's not considerable or compared to what is in the international market. That relationship has been that of exploitation. Look at Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world, if not the poorest, based on UN figures. If you look at the GDP of that country, Niger relies on international donors in terms of its operation. Then one of the major superpower, a major country like France, that has a huge potential and connections around the globe, and beginning to sit on the neck of Niger. You won't believe that this is happening in the 21st century, but that is the way France has operated. France's imperialistic behavior in sub-Saharan Africa has been called to question by Europeans, by experts in all other areas. But the country of France continue to put its interest and also put its interest first ahead of that of Niger. Now, when you look at the military taking over power from the country of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, who is never going to come to power anymore, what happens at this stage, have come to terms with the reality that if you are in power, you need to focus on the interest of your people, not the interest of the colonizer. So what we are seeing in Niger is not new. What we are seeing in sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the Francophone countries is not new. France's colonialist mindset has defined the way those countries operate economically, financially, socially, in all other areas. If you look at the amount of money that these countries deposit into French banks, it is alarming. No country in the world will tolerate that. France cannot tolerate its 1 million euros to be taken or deposited in another country. But France accepts that to happen in those countries. When these nations speak out to France, then, and standing up to France in the mainstream media, that is a coup. We're not saying that democratically elected presidents should not stay in power. If you are democratically elected, as is claimed in Niger, you should work for the interest of your people. When you look at the relationship with France and Niger, Mohamed Bazoum, if you look at his record in terms of growth, development, investment, operation, market economy, development, infrastructure, it's below par. If you look at other countries around the region who are beginning to realize the importance of their people and taking steps to redefine their colonial history, France's presence in Africa has been a disgrace, and Niger has exposed France's weakness in the region. France is one of those countries that does business, put it in interest first. There's nothing wrong for you to put your interest first. But when we talk about fairness and in operating in that region, France has enslaved the economy of Niger, the people of Niger, the uranium of whatever percent. Some NGOs will put it at 50%, some put it at 35% of uranium to electrify France. But when you look at Niger, it has nothing in terms of electricity capacity, and Niger relies on the neighboring countries and other countries around the region for its electricity. And then you talk about this relationship that it's meant for two nations to interact, and Mohamed Bazoum come to France and fly to Europe and travel around, visit France and see the way France is. And then you go back to Niger, and then you believe that the people in Niger don't see things on TV. You don't see how the French people live. You don't see how other countries around the continent of Africa are living. And you are not putting your peoples first. And when you are toppled by the regimes in those countries, what people will say is a military coup. Of course, it is military coup. Now, we have to look at the underlying consequences and the historical narratives that are below those coups. If you look at France's behavior in the region, it's been that of a disaster, of a country that is meant to exploit people who do not have. So Niger has exposed France's presence and disgraced France. That's what we have to accept. But France is a country that has been in Niger. It's out there for its own interest. It's out there to exploit the country, to put the Nigerian people second, and to make sure that it deals with the political leader. That's the way France has been behaving in Africa. France speaks only to the elites and the capitals on West African countries, especially those Francophone nations. But Niger is one of those countries that stood up to France in a manner that the world has never seen before. And kicking France out from the country as exposes the weakness of France from all areas. When you look at Mohamed Bassoum's interaction with France, it clearly indicates that he never talked about the importance or the Nigerian people. He never carried out some immense development or infrastructural growth. The economy, Nigeria is one of the poorest countries in the world, and this country have huge amount of uranium deposits. How many French companies are invested in Niger? So the relationship has been that of exploitation, and that's the attitude of France in the region. But I'm not saying that those other countries like the United States and also other nations that are stationed in the Sahel region are there for, particularly for the Nigerian people. But in this case, we are looking at why one country's name keep coming up. It clearly indicates that there is a problem. This goes back to colonial time. France has enslaved its former colonies, and that has not gone well in the region. A number of people have gone out of their way to talk about France's presence in Africa, but France continued to enslave those countries, steal their wealth, get them to deposit their money into the French banks, and also French earns interest. What kind of countries interact in that way? What kind of nation will do business like that? Can France allow its nationals or its citizens to be in certain situation? Does the citizens of France know that their country is impoverishing particular nations in the continent of Africa? So when you look at why Niger is pushing back to France, these two countries are not friends in terms of their operations. They could have interaction in different ways, but France was in Niger for the purpose of uranium. If you look at historical data, it shows that Niger's uranium has been out there just to for exploitation. There's also a number of things that people need to understand. In France, fears are particularly focused on the exploitation of uranium from Niger and the possible consequences of this energy independence, a natural resource essential to the operations of France's nuclear power plant. Uranium mined in Niger has been exploited for over 4 decades by France's nuclear fuel cycle group called Uranium, which was formerly known as Areva. The multinational, which is 90% owned by the French state, operates 3 mines in Niger, only one of which is currently in the production. There are mines whose operating companies, so mine is over 63% owned by Uranium and based near the town of Alit in the desert to the north of Niger. Although the mine is nearing depletion, its operation has been extended until 2040. You also have the Akoko mining site, around 10 kilometers from Aleph, has been closed since the end of March of 2021, with reserves exhausted after 4 decades of mining. Company Mineral, a quota 59% owned by Orano, is now working on a project to develop its site. Finally, you have Orano holds a 63% stake in the Morans mine, located 80 kilometers south of Aleph, which is considered to be one of the world's largest uranium deposits. However, after an operating permit was issued in 2009, production at the site was suspended due to a lack of favorable market. Let's look at France's benefit in the country of Niger in terms of the uranium that it makes from that country. France has continued to manipulate and also extort Niger to an extent that you won't believe. For example, Niger is one of France's top 3 uranium suppliers. To operate the 56 nuclear reactors in France's 18 power plants operated by EDF requires an average of around 8,000 tons of natural uranium every year. Following the cessation of mining on French soil in the early 2000s, France turned to several countries simultaneously for its supply. The diversification of supply is a source of security for EDF. If you look at different aspects, in 2022, France has 5 uranium suppliers from Kazakhstan, over 23,000 tons, from Uzbekistan, with over 16,000 tons, from Namibia with over 12,000 tons, from Kyrgyzstan with over 506 tons, and from Niger you have over 17,000 tons, and from Australia you have 12,000 tons, and from Brazil over 628,000 tons, and from Hungary you have 22 tons. So to point out, look at Burkina Faso, look at also Guinea, and also in Mali. All of this interaction with France has been below par in terms of their investments, in terms of their interaction, and those countries, if you consider the historical information, has benefited nothing from France. France hasn't engaged in huge infrastructural development and growth in those countries, which is why the people of those countries from West Africa, particularly in France-speaking countries, have been monitoring the situation over the years. And now they've stood up to France that this is not going to continue. We will call it a coup. Some are hesitant to call it a coup. Some will say that it is a revolution. Others will put it in several ways. But France's behavior in the continent have been called into questions, and we all are looking at what's going to be happening in those other countries that France has huge presence in terms of their interaction and business dealings in the region. African countries are beginning to stand up to their former colonizers who have enslaved them over the years. And we will continue to see how this will transcend, and this behavior of a colonial mindset that France possesses in the region will not happen anymore, or it's not tolerated any longer in the continent of Africa. So the notion that Niger is not an important country for France has been underestimated. Niger kicking out France from its country has also given the opportunity for the country to stand up to itself and also look at new partners and redefine its relationship with such a colonial country that has also been in the region for an exploitative mission over the years. Hopefully that Niger will pick up itself and also organize itself correctly and invest in its own people and transform the country in the next couple of years or the years to come. And we all are looking at what happens in terms of the geopolitics in the region, in the Sahel, and also to know why France's presence in the region will be called in question if France does not withdraw itself or deal with those countries in an equal footing. I want to thank you for watching. If you are new to this channel, we encourage you to check some of our informative videos here on this channel. Give us a like, and we shall be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.